Hi, and welcome to On Point. I'm Mandi Gosling. The World Health Organization says that cancer is now the world's #1 killer. More than 7.5 million people died in cancer of 2008, and without intervention, that number is expected to rise to more than 30 million annual deaths by 2030. My guests today are playing key roles in that intervention and are here to discuss the models of cancer research, how it is funded, and how more effective strategies for curing this disease can be found. Adam Garone is the CEO and co-founder of Movember, the largest global fundraiser for prostate cancer research. And Michael Baltazar is a documentary filmmaker who was inspired by events in his own life to make a film that explores the epidemic of cancer and where we are falling short in research and treatment of the disease. Thank you both for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I read an article in the New York Times that estimated that the amount of money that the government has put into cancer research since 1971 is over $100 billion. That's not even counting what private groups like the American Cancer Society has invested. And I think that really begs the question, if we've put that much money, over $100 billion, what are we doing wrong? Adam?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, and being new to the whole cancer world, Movember was started by essentially marketing and business development guys, and our approach to raising awareness and funds for cancer, and in our case, prostate cancer and testicular cancer, was revolutionary in a sense, in that we challenge men to grow moustaches, and our tagline is changing the face of men's health. And we get them to change their appearance, and that's the commitment, like doing a run or a walk for other charities. So getting into this game now about 6 or 7 years ago, and understanding how the research community works is been really quite eye-opening. And as you mentioned in the introduction, we're now the biggest funder of prostate cancer research in the world. And in last year's campaign alone, we raised over $70 million. So we take a very active role now in understanding where that money's going and what progress are we making. And when you start to challenge the research community on that, they're often not used to that sort of challenge and approach. And for us, we want to see real progress. And not being from that world, we come at it a very impatient sort of mindset. It's like, come on, we want to see progress. And I think, from my understanding of the research community, the way it's structured and is around the researchers being rewarded by getting written up in scientific papers and journals, and that gives them sort of notoriety in the scientific community. That is often very different to actually providing some sort of a breakthrough that's going to get some sort of medicine or treatment option to the clinic where it's going to save and impact lives. The other thing that the research community spent a lot of time on is applying for grants. And we're now a big funder of those grants, and we do that through our beneficiary partners like the Prostate Cancer Foundation here in the US. What they tend to do is spend an awful lot of time, because they have to, applying for grants. And the grants are often written in such a way that it's not necessarily going to promote sort of the breakthrough that we're looking for. So the researchers then sort of game it, I guess, and structure their bid for the funds around the parameters that are being set. So in some cases they don't have the flexibility to be truly exploratory and spend so much time sort of applying for grants.
Right. Michael, as you're making this documentary, would you agree that $100 billion is, not working because of the research community, or would you attribute something else?
Yeah, I mean, when I started this documentary, I kind of had the same question you had. We declared the war on cancer in 1971. 30 years later, we're losing the battle, and so I was wondering, okay, so where is all this money being spent? And in our research, we found a lot of the same things Adam found. Was a lot of the money is, a lot of the research is being focused on publication, but also the research is very it's being awarded to very sort of niche areas where, because it's easier to prove those areas, but also it's being awarded to these treatments that focus on like elongating your life, you know, from 6 months to a year instead of years, and that's how we measure the success, is in months, not years. And when we talk about improvements in treatments of cancer, it's measured in months, not years. So, in a lot of the research we read, it's a systemic problem. You know, it's a problem with the way the research community is conducting research.
When I add, the other thing that we've found is, as a global organisation, we're funding research institutions in 8 countries. And what has become very, very clear is there is a clear lack of collaboration. There is peer assessment that goes on around research, but when they dive into the research, there is just no real collaboration going on, and particularly across countries. And again, the way the research community has been structured historically is you know, you're not really incented to share, because you know, it's all about getting that breakthrough and getting written up in a paper. And so when we dived into it and we started looking at what all our beneficiary partners in each of the countries were funding, there was a lot of duplication and really no collaboration going on. So part of our granting process now forces those institutions to collaborate.
So what would make a research facility or a scientist not want to share their findings? I sort of read, on one hand, they may not want to share their mistakes, but they also, you know, at the same time should be sharing their successes. I wondered sort of what would prevent someone from sharing that, from collaborating?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the intellectual property ownership. And this is driven by dollars at the end of the day. And where foundations like ours have a role is in the very exploratory sort of seed or angel funding stage, where we're funding really exploratory research. When it gets to a certain stage, then the pharmaceutical companies and the governments will step in and fund it and take it to the next level and take it through. So everyone wants to own that intellectual property, you know, the researchers themselves, and then the institutions, and then the government, or not so much the government, but the pharmaceutical companies. So you've got intellectual property issues going on, and then in terms of getting grants and things like that, you know, they're structured to make a breakthrough. Now, in the very early stages, what we found was there were so many people essentially researching the same thing, and they're just not communicating. And there's really no financial incentive for them to do that. And so we are creating frameworks around them to be able to collaborate. And there's some great free software now that enables organisations, no matter where they are in the world, to collaborate, but also incenting them to do that.
Right. Did you find that too, that sort of the business of it can interfere with the progress of science?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I mean, one of the things I want to add is that the cancer sort of research community is what they've been focused on the last 30 years is figuring out everything they can about cancer, about the way it works, how it spreads, but they haven't been so focused on actually curing it, right? So we've gained like an amazing amount of knowledge in cancer, but we haven't really been focused on actually curing it, you know, which is interesting because we've actually been able to cure diseases in the past without actually understanding how we cure them, you know. We can, AIDS is a good example where we sort of concocted a cocktail of medicines, and we don't quite understand the mechanism of how it's actually prolonging life, you know. But I feel like the cancer community is stuck in this sort of bubble of trying to figure out how everything works without actually attacking the main problem.
I think I've read too that the part of what's inhibiting it is that we need more people take more funding towards riskier, but like sort of a high risk, high reward treatments. And was that something that you felt like you didn't see a lot of as well, that people weren't taking chances, that scientists weren't?
Well, the problem with that is that I mean, like Adam said, you have to apply for a grant, and you can't do your research unless you have the money. And so you have to cater your grant proposals to what they're awarding the money to. And yeah, it's like I said before, they're very niche, sort of, very specific, very detailed areas of research that they actually award money to, because they know that it'll get published, it'll get looked at, and it's highly successful to figure out how a particular mechanism of cancer works. Whereas, for example, metastases, which is a spreading of cancer throughout the body, that's an area of research that is very underfunded and is very under-researched. And it's the main cause of death, you know? We can cure cancer if it's at stage 1 in a primary site, but once it's metastasized, that's when the mortality rate, increases. But at the same time, we don't study the metastases, the actual process of it spreading. We focus on the beginning stages of it. So.
I know that Movember has a pretty solid philosophy towards like high risk and high reward types of research.
Yep.
Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, well, particularly through the Prostate Cancer Foundation here in the US, and they really pioneered this in the whole cancer community. They've got a series of innovation grants, which are small grants. The application form's about 3-4 pages long, and it's a small sort of really seed type of funding, and it's, it ranges from $70,000 to $100,000, and it's aimed at innovation. And yeah, that looks like a good idea, and who knows where it could lead. They're short term, and again, one of the requirements is for you to get ongoing funding, you have to share the outcomes. So they require each of the researchers to come to a summit each year and present the findings. And that is really helpful, because it's, if they strike on something, that they will get further funding, but it also forces them to go, hey, we sort of at a roadblock here, and then it's public knowledge, and then hopefully no one else goes down that same path. So
Right.
It is trying to encourage people to be really entrepreneurial in how they look at all these sort of things, because often with a lot of diseases, and how we come across a cure is often in quite a non-traditional sort of research way. Someone stumbles across something that leads to something else.
As I thought about sort of the idea of high risk, high reward, it really, I felt, spoke to the nature of Movember in a daring kind of way, that the way that your organization is trying to market themselves to men's health and sort of embracing the masculine. I thought maybe you could just give us a sort of a brief description of how Movember does go about raising money.
Yeah, absolutely. So we stumbled across the idea, and it was a joke, and it started as a dare amongst 30 of our friends in Australia to bring back the moustache. And then we were surprised by the conversation, the controversy that created, and it sort of fell a bit flat when you're trying to describe to your friends and family and girlfriends why you're growing a moustache, and it was for no particular reason. So we thought that we could evolve this into a cause, and at the time, this was 2004, and even today, you look at the huge disparity between all the great programs that women have created around breast cancer and that movement, compared to, men's health and prostate cancer, and there's just nothing. And often these diseases, particularly cancer, get some sort of momentum because someone has been super passionate about it and struck a chord. And Susan G. Komen, with the loss of her sister, did that, and we're hoping to do the same for men's cancer and prostate cancer. So we do come at it a very irreverent and fun way. We get men to grow moustaches in the month of November, and that's how we get men engaged in their health and challenge them to think about cancer. And for us, you go through different stages in this journey of cancer. You cancer-free, and there's a lot of stuff you can do today, no matter your age, to say cancer-free. health, lifestyle, diet, not smoking. And then there's the next stage where you have cancer, but you actually don't know it. And what we promote actively through our campaign is the need to go and be screened for different types of cancers during your annual physical and just be aware of the risk, whether it's skin cancer, testicular cancer, or prostate cancer. Know the risks and go and have an annual physical and be screened for it. Then hopefully you can capture that cancer at a very early stage, and the majority of cancers are curable at an early stage, and that is key, getting in an early stage and then going down the right course of treatment.
I wanted to show one of the commercials that you guys used in your campaign this past year, sort of to give our viewers a sense of this irreverence that can actually lead to $70+ million a year in funding.
Sure.
We're going to show that now.
He said, hey, what's your name? She said, touch me. He said, girl, what's your name? She said, touch me. I'll show you everything there is to show. I'll teach you things you don't even know. We're going down to the river.
Every man deserves to grow a little bit of luxury.
Go deeper. Go deeper.
I feel like the campaign, it really brings a lighthearted sense of something to something that's in fact very serious. And because you're targeting a gender, is that been effective, a way of marketing to them?
Yeah, it has been. I mean, that commercial said nothing about cancer, but if you go to guys, and our target market is guys, from 19 to 60-year-olds, and if you go to them initially with, hey, we want you to get involved with prostate cancer, nothing will happen. And you look at prostate cancer over the years, and that's why nothing has happened for that cause, because there was nothing that resonated with guys. So we approach it in a really fun, irreverent, stylistic way and get them engaged in the campaign and owning it. And they become walking, talking billboards for 30 days because the moustache is on their face. So in a way, it's the sort of perfect word of mouth campaign. But, a big part of cancer and fighting this disease is getting the community engaged and making it a priority. And when you have a campaign like Movember, where last year we had almost 500,000 guys participating, and they got another further 2 million donors involved, plus a whole heap of media, suddenly people do take notice of that, and that gets governments involved, research institutions, and the best minds start to go, okay, well, there's money in prostate cancer research now, I'm going to come across and help that cause. So it's all part of this big machine. I think the point and the remaining challenge we have is getting the research community collaborating and getting that model far more efficient with how we can churn through the multitude of options that we're all searching at the moment, and ultimately find a cure. And in some cases, a cure for a particular cancer is not going to be a vaccine. Cancer is going to be there forever, and what we'll probably find with a greater level of awareness and screening and better screening tests is the incidence of people being diagnosed with cancer, particularly as we live longer, will continue to go up. But what we hope to do is have the mortality rate drop down. And for us with prostate cancer is to live in a world where no man should die from prostate cancer, because they're aware of the disease, we've got a better screening test, and then we've got far more effective treatment options. And that combination for us will be the cure.
When you talk about sort of raising awareness, and the model really speaks to like our cultural time, sort of pop culture, and with documentary films as well, they've been, they've changed things. You've compared what you're trying to do to An Inconvenient Truth, what it did for the environment, and
Right.
a documentary can really speak to a generation as well. What is it that you are, when you set out to make this, what is it that you hope to change?
Well, a lot, I guess. I mean, when I started Thinking about this documentary, it was obviously from a personal tragedy, and
And can you tell us a little bit about that?
sure. Yeah, my girlfriend passed away of cancer in 2010. She was diagnosed with stage 4 melanoma in November. Less than 2 months later, she was dead. And so I was, I had a lot of questions. You know, I didn't understand how you could get stage 4 cancer and then have, you know, hardly any symptoms, not really know about it, be diagnosed with it, and then just pass away 2 months later. It just happened so quickly. And then while she was sick, I had a lot of questions about, well, you know, there's no real place to turn to for cancer information that you can really trust. Like, all the doctors tell you different things. You don't know who to believe. There's sort of a lot of fraudulent treatment as well that you don't know who to listen to. You go on the internet and there's all this disparate information. And then after she passed away, of course, I started thinking about this film and how come nobody knows anything about cancer, you know? I know a lot about shark fin soup, I know a lot about global warming, I know a lot about the economy, but the world's biggest killer, you know? And then I find out like 1 out of 2 people are diagnosed with cancer within their lifetime. I mean, that's 50%, that's either me or you, you know? And how come nobody's talking about it? Why doesn't anybody know about it, you know? And how come there hasn't been a documentary that's been made? So there's been documentaries, people have covered cancer, people have talked about it, but nobody's ever seen it. You know what I mean? Like, how many documentaries have you seen about cancer? And I'm in the film world. I'd never seen one, you know? So I just felt like it's, you know, it's definitely an area that needs to be addressed and needs to be explored, that people need to know about it. And when Adam's talking about screening processes, but how do you get screened for cancer, you know? There's, depending on the type of cancer, there's, you know, pap smear tests, mammograms, and so forth, but there's no real way to walk into a clinic and say, you know, am I free of cancer, right? That's an area of research that hasn't even really been looked into either. I mean, we should be able to just go in, take a urine test or take a blood test, and they'll have biomarkers and tell you whether or not you're cancer-free or not. But so this whole notion of early detection is sort of a facade, I think.
Do you think it's specific to the kind of cancer that she had with melanoma? Or with, like, is that something you're finding out about a lot of other cancers as well?
I think certain cancers are much more detectable, right? Breast cancer is, cervical cancer certainly is, prostate cancer certainly is, but yeah, pancreatic cancer, liver cancer. When she was diagnosed with cancer, it was in her liver and lungs and spleen. So, yet, you know, she only started showing symptoms a couple weeks before she went into the hospital, and so I just don't see how early screening would have necessarily helped her unless there's, because you don't go in and ask and get screened for cancer unless you're showing symptoms. But at the time she had symptoms, it was already too late, you know.
Right.
It was already stage 4. And, yeah. And, you know, I mean, cancer isn't really progressive. It's not like you go from stage 1 to stage 2 to stage 3 to stage 4. You could literally have stage 1, get treated, think you're cancer-free, then wake up with stage 4, which is exactly what happened to her. You know?
That's one thing I think sounds like the prostate cancer community has done a bit better job with is being able to get a blood test and find out if you have prostate cancer.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is one of the biggest issues right now with prostate cancer is there is a blood test you can take, and it's a good indicator as to whether you've got prostate cancer or not. And then there's biopsies and a range of other tests that they can fairly accurately diagnosed that you have prostate cancer, one of the big issues with prostate cancer is there's actually no symptoms until it moves beyond the prostate and typically into your bones and blood, and by that stage it's often too late. So the biggest challenge we've got at the moment, and one of the programs we're funding through a collaborative global program, is to try and find a better screening test that can accurately tell a guy what type of prostate cancer he's got and therefore the best treatment option. And in 80% of the cases with prostate cancer, depending on the guy's age, the best treatment is actually doing nothing and just watching it, because the side effects of radiation or surgery are so severe that it's just not worth removing or radiating the prostate. So,
and is that something that this new sort of discovery that's happened because of Movember funding, they've discovered 24 different strains, is it, of prostate cancer?
Yeah, that's right. So through funding that we helped provide at the University of Michigan, they've discovered there's 24 different types of prostate cancer. The issue now is designing tests that can tell a guy which one of those 24 different types of prostate cancers they have. And then the other side of that is, once we know which type of prostate cancer a guy has got, what is the most effective treatment option? So we've got a small piece of the puzzle at the moment. We need better screening tests, and then we need to understand what are the better treatment options to marry up with the particular type of prostate cancer a guy has. So, like technology, mobile phone technology, or the internet technology is moving, so too is medical technology and the advances that we make there. So it is very feasible that within our lifetimes we can live in a world where men shouldn't be dying from prostate cancer.
Right, and that could lead, and you were saying earlier as well that the research you develop in prostate cancer could lend itself to other cancers?
Yeah, and vice versa all around. So there's a lot of common things with cancers. I mean, each one is different, and there's 24 different types of prostate cancer, but these learnings can be very relevant to other cancers, and this is where collaboration, not just within a specific cancer, but across the cancer community is so vitally important. And I think we are making progress. It's just very, very slow.
I want to thank you so much for being here today. You as well, Michael. Thanks for sharing your story with us, and good luck with this documentary. I'm anxious to see it.
Yeah,
thank you for joining us for On Point. I'm Mandi Gosling. What's your estimation, time-wise, making a film like this?
It's always a much longer process than you think when you begin.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, our original time frame was about 1.5 years, but it looks like it's going to be 2 years or longer of actually gathering all the information and putting everything together and talking to the right people and getting the funding also to do it properly.